Homeschooling. Okay. Homeschooling is one of those areas where the politics of religion plays a very important part. And also what plays an equally important role is American tradition of individual rights and individual choice and a desire for the least amount of government control as possible. And both of those are very contentious, passionate issues, I think, to everyone in the United States. So when we talk about homeschooling, let's see, I have some numbers for you. There are approximately 1.5 million students being homeschooled, and we use it as a verb, to be homeschooled, in the United States. Very, very approximate. Okay. Homeschooling is not just a free-for-all. Anybody can do anything they want, but almost. Every state has some regulations to control homeschooling, but they vary considerably by state, and most of them are very, very lightly controlled. There's complete freedom as to what textbooks, if any, are used. There's complete freedom about how long, how many hours per day, or how many days per week, or how many weeks per month this has to go on. And I can understand why, because if this is going on in the home, it's intensive, it's one-on-one, which is allows learning to occur much quicker, individual focus on individual needs, so I can understand why it's so lightly regulated. The history of this goes back very, very deep into the United States. That was all there was for a long time before the public education system was actually established and the funding set up. Before the U.S. Department of Education was set up, there was no federal funds. So, going back 200, 250 years, that's all there was. There's also a strong tradition of some small minority groups have always homeschooled their children. Are any of you familiar with the Amish?
Yes.
Okay. And, oh, that's wonderful that you've read about that. There's a very strong Amish community in the village. Well, they live outside the village, but of where I am in New York. I grew up in Pennsylvania, where the Amish are very prevalent, and their religious traditions, laws require a separation from the overall community, and they've been homeschooling their children forever. But homeschooling really didn't have the political and cultural and religious and contentious aspects that we're going through right now until probably the mid-70s. And again, opinion, I think it started as a reaction to the late 60s and early 70s massive cultural change in the U.S., women's rights, more sexual freedoms, more freedom in every aspect of life, was a result of 1960s and early 70s activism. And it impacted very powerfully on the whole country, and it looked it looked at that time like the whole country was just being swept along in this tide of cultural change very, very quickly. And then there's a backlash. Then there's a whoa, slow down. We don't like where you're going, a feeling among people. And again, it comes from the ground. And how can we stop this? How can we protect our children from this cultural change that's sweeping the country that we don't approve of and we don't like? And homeschooling then became a very good option for parents who didn't want their children in public schools because of this cultural change. At the same time as we were going through that cultural change, taken to the Supreme Court in the US was the issue of prayer in schools, which again, very inflammatory, very divisive, dividing the country. Which way is it going to go with, as you would expect, the more passionate religious people who tended to be evangelical Protestant, objecting very, very, very strongly to the taking the crucifixes out of the classrooms, taking the prayer before class out of the classrooms, taking the prayer before a football game, and I'm not soccer, American football, away. At the same time as you had that, let me see, I lost it for a minute now. Religion, I'll come back to it. There was something else very important that was going on in terms of the society. I didn't write it in my notes. Anyway, so you have all of that turmoil that is the impetus for, oh yes, of course, racial desegregation, okay? Late 60s, taken all the way, again, to the Supreme Court, that separate but equal was unconstitutional. So that public schools, by law, and in many cases by force of military, in some places in the South, they had military with guns in the schools to safely allow black students to enter, because the tension, the feeling, the misunderstanding, the hatred, again, I'm putting my opinions in here, were so strong. So all of these things led to either the establishment of more private schools or homeschooling. So it's a very contentious, cultural, politically dynamic issue that it's very difficult to get people to sit down and talk about with each other in a reasonable way to reach some accommodation. It's a very, very hot, controversial, emotional issue. Now, studies about it. I was able to find pretty much agreement from all sources that scholastically there was not much difference in terms of the abilities of students that were homeschooled compared to the abilities of students who were in the public school system. The variety was there. Some were educated very well, performed very, very well on standardized tests, and were admitted to top universities. And from there all the way down to no interest whatsoever in any kind of higher education. So that was, I guess, not surprising. I think parents who are truly interested and have instill in their children the value of education will do a good job and get their children to their highest level that they are capable of achieving. And if education is not a high value for you, you will educate your children that way, and to get them to the minimum level to do what they can. So I'm not surprised by that.